Hi guys, Woody here. Today I want to talk about a post on the official US forums for Diablo 3 for Demon Hunter balancing proposals. And yeah, this has been brought to our attention by someone on the chat. And I'm not really around much on the official forums, I mostly browse Reddit. But I know that there are some people that really they try to debate, discuss, and bring like good ideas and so on. And here there's DMKT who made this post here. I know he's like a big contributor in general. And he essentially went through all of the builds that he have on Demon Hunters. And he tried to like kind of like estimate, what kind of buffs they need to get to like a certain level and so on. And I thought there was a couple of cool ideas here. He also like suggested some reworks or some items and so on. And I just want to go over this and give my own input as well. And maybe we can also bring this a little bit more to attention for like a big balancing update that might come in the future. Probably not for Season 21, I assume, but for Season 22. I think Blizzard mentioned something like that they want to do that after introducing all of the new sets. So we'll see. And it would be really cool to see, like all the different builds that we have on Demon Hunter perform like around equally well. So of course it doesn't need to be perfect balance, and some builds work a little bit better in some situations than others for pushing, for farming, and so on. But if all of them end up, within like a rather like acceptable range of, let's say, like two or three tiers, next to each other, I think that would be pretty good. So let's see. We have first of all like the current meta builds, or like rather meta builds, like the high clears of different builds. So here's like Rapid Fire with LON or LOD and Natalia. We have Multishot, we have Cluster Bombs, we have Impale, and we have the N6 M4 Cluster Arrow. And of course, these are not all of the builds. You're gonna see more of them later, but this is what has been used in like the recent seasons at least, and what you can kind of find on the leaderboard here and there. Some of these clears are rather low estimates for those paragons. I think that because Demon Hunter is so far out of the meta, no one is really pushing Demon Hunter really try hard, and these might be like non-season clears even, so they're generally under pushed there as well. So people don't really try too hard. And you can see this very extremely here on N6 M4. 125 is very low for this build, and we should expect more with this, and this is also correctly labeled as such here. But just in general, we could probably say that with the being under pushed, underplayed, Demon Hunter loses maybe like between 1 and 3 tiers depending on the build. And you can probably just add, kind of like 2 tiers flat compared to other classes to those clears to kind of estimate the real power level of those builds. Simply because less people are playing it, and there's less competition. So DMKT went for a balancing goal of 136. I think this is pretty low, at least in the current version of Diablo that we have. We have solo 150 clears on Witch Doctor and on Crusader. Barb is getting quite close to that, and then we have also like Monk being around Barb level, and then you have like the weak classes like Solo Nova, Solo Necro, Solo Demon Hunter, Solo Wizard, and generally Demon Hunter is like I think the second worst on the leaderboards, and this should definitely change. Also for the other classes. Yeah, like we really need a big buff and not just try to go for like some kind of like intermediate level. I think I would expect for the future to at least see Witch Doctor and Crusader get nerfed. Crusader will lose a little bit from losing the season bonus, but like even on season right now in Season 20, Crusader and Witch Doctor are most likely going to clear 150. Crusader is pretty much a certainty at this point. Witch Doctor we'll see, but it's definitely possible. So if someone really goes for it, it will happen. And this is like more than 10 tiers above what the Demon Hunter could hope to achieve. So this is really extreme. And even when the season bonus falls off, we will have like close to 150 Crusader clears. So I think Crusader needs to be nerfed by like around 5 tiers. Witch Doctor needs to be nerfed by around 5 tiers. And then they will be around equal to the other classes like the Barb and the Monk. And then Demon Hunter will get brought up a bit. Nova, Necro will get brought up a bit through the new sets, hopefully. And then Wizard also needs something, but we're probably going to see a Hydra rework. But then again, like we don't want just one build, we want more, we want variety and so on, because this is really what makes the class more interesting. So DMKT talks about the main class issues here, and with some points I agree, with some I disagree. So he says that we need a lot of defensive items to survive, and they are like rather bland and so on. I don't think this is really a lot different from other classes. And also, I don't really think that we are forced into taking a lot of defensive items as a Demon Hunter necessarily. This is just what the builds are. Usually, you have like Raptor Clarity in every pushing build, for example. And then you have like other stuff like Marauders that has the Story Secret, for example. And I think this is fine generally. I think the builds are generally fine. You know, they have like, they appeal to different audiences, they have different playstyles, and I think that's okay. The problem is just the overall power level. And I don't think that Demon Hunter is particularly squishy in most builds. You can make all of the builds really tanky. Like the most optimal setups can be squishy in some cases. For example, Multishot is a very squishy setup if you play the most optimal version. But if you don't, you can also go for like a super tanky version with like Endless Walk, for example, Elusive Ring, and at no big power loss. So I think it's good that it's not too easy to survive. And this is definitely what makes the Demon Hunter class interesting compared to some other classes where you literally face tank everything. So we already have face tanking builds with Rapid Fire, with Impale. Those are very tanky builds. They are made to be tanky because this is, you know, how you optimize the DPS. And I don't think we need to make everything super tanky on Demon Hunter. This is probably the wrong approach here. But it is true that especially the Natalia Rapid Fire, it's actually unplayable, I'd say. At least unplayable on a higher level than the regular LOD Rapid Fire. And this is an issue. It's essentially just a non-season build, and it only really becomes better after like Paragon 5k, 6k or something. And then, you know, it kind of like has like a phase where Paragons give it a lot of power because you have to invest tons into Vitality to even have a chance of surviving. And then you also need to get the armor from this Dexterity and so on. This is rather sad. I've actually never played Natalia Rapid Fire myself, and I think this is actually probably a rather interesting build to play compared to the LOD version, because it's much more active. You have like, you know, not just like just left click and channel for like 2 minutes straight playstyle, but you actually have to keep up your Rain of Vengeance buffs every 10 seconds. You have to make pulls all the time and so on. So I think this is, it's quite sad that especially this build is so weak on lower Paragons. We also have his set analysis here. So yeah, right now Unreal Essence is pretty much a multi-shot only build. We have Marauders being a cluster bombs only build. We have Natalia being a rapid fire only build. You can play Fan of Knives Natalia, which is like the strongest Fan of Knives setup. I actually have a setup on that for non-season, and I think that can do somewhere in the high 120. So if you try really hard with like 3k plus Paragon, it's rather fun, but yeah, it's extremely weak, and also like Rain of Vengeance is completely irrelevant. So there needs to be a big buff for that. For example, if you want to have like a Rain of Vengeance build like in Season 3. So this could be like a completely new build essentially. And also here the Shadow's Mantle. It's only Impale, and you know, it was designed to have, you know, some other supporting skills or some supporting items with sort of Ill Will for Chakram, with Lord Greenstone for Fan of Knives. But yeah, this is very correctly identified that the 2-piece set bonus is way too weak to make any of that viable. And I think it would be pretty awesome to have a new build for especially Shadow set that is not just right click Impale or left click Impale, but it has like 2 skills. You know, you have like Fan of Knives for AoE clear, or you have Chakram for some kind of like AoE coverage while you nuke down elites of Impale or something like that. And I think this would be amazing. So depending on what the new set is going to be, I think this is definitely a good opportunity to make new builds, make new fun variations, especially of Shadow's Mantle. And it's simply too boring in my opinion right now with just 1 skill, and you know, there's like no micromanagement required really. So it's kind of sad. And the same with Natalia's Vengeance, where we could have more builds with like a pure Rain of Vengeance build, with a Strafe build, and we just need like more supporting items. And also like Fan of Knives, for example, could make a return to some degree with a buff there. So the solutions, yeah, some numbers buffs. I guess overall this is pretty good ideas. I'm not going to go everything in detail, but especially buffing 4-piece Natalias is a good idea, I think. I would also accompany this with a buff to Crashing Rain, because I think that when you make a Rain of Vengeance build, it should be mostly focused around Crashing Rain. So that's just the way it was in Season 3 and Season 4. That was really cool, really fun, and you had to have, and you had this like targeted nuke on a little location while having like a little bit of AoE coverage. And I think that was a pretty nice combo. So I would also add some numbers to a Crashing Rain build to make sure that we don't just go with like a Hellcat build, because we have way too many grenade builds. I really dislike Hellcat Wasteguard because it makes every skill that has grenades, it requires every of those to use the grenades because of Hellcat Wasteguard. So the same would happen with Rain of Vengeance. And I think going back to, it's like some lightning Rain of Vengeance action with Crashing Rain would be pretty awesome. You also have some other suggestions here for defensive legendary updates. I think overall this is a little bit over the top. I think that the defensive items you have are fine, and we don't really need to improve those anymore, as I mentioned. And also, I think it would be cool to add a little bit of utility and maybe a little bit of damage to them, but it just makes them even more mandatory. And I think that's an issue. If you want to have, a little bit of choice, if you want to have a little bit of different setups, you can't buff, something like Elusive Ring to infinity with 80% damage reduction and attack speed bonus and everything. So this is just too much. I think the Fortress Ballista is probably a good suggestion here. It's like a small bonus to an already pretty solid item that unfortunately doesn't really fit in anywhere besides Fan of Knives. But this is what it is. I think defensive items should stay defensive and should not be overly one-sided as this suggests here. So I think the big issue with something like Band of Might is that making a build without Band of Might is essentially impossible. While when you have something like Unity in your build, this is like at half of the power level or even less than the Band of Might. You have the choice to replace Unity with something like a convention here and there, but you don't have the choice to replace Band of Might. Band of Might is necessary in builds, that at least those that require some kind of toughness, and there's like almost no option to drop it. And the same would happen with those items here. So for example, when you buff Wrath of Clarity to 75% damage reduction, it would be terrible to run like a speed GR100 setup without Wrath of Clarity because you want the Nemesis Bracelets, for example. So right now you have kind of the option, okay, do you give up 50% of toughness for the Nemesis Bracelets? Do you think this is fine or not? But with 75% damage reduction and even like some damage buff, there would be no choice anymore. We have some other suggestions here for Elemental Arrow, for example, Crider Shot buff, Augustine's Panacea buff. I think this is good. I think if they ever buff Augustine's Panacea, they need to be careful about the numbers. But yeah, we need big buffs if you ever want to make a Ball Lightning build or like some kind of Elemental Arrow build viable without the new set. And yeah, I think these numbers are totally appropriate. I'm not really, up to date on all the power levels of all of the really, underplayed and underperforming builds. I tried many of them in the past, but there have been many changes since then, so I didn't really, try all of them. But I think some kind of like these values are probably appropriate. Something like Elemental Arrow definitely needs like a 20 tier buff or so, I'd say, to even be close to competitive. Even more with Chakram, I'd say. Yeah, Chakram, something like this sounds pretty cool. More numbers on sort of Illwill is fine. More numbers on Lord Greenstone is fine, with faster cycles as well. This could also make a Strafe T16 farm build quite good, or like a low GR Strafe set or build. So yeah, same with this. I think there's like long overdue balancing changes, and those numbers all seem pretty fine, I'd say, to not make it super crazy, but at least viable. And a Strafe set would be pretty awesome. Then we have the Crashing Rain. We mentioned that already. We have Hunter's Wrath. I think this is something you have to be a little bit careful about. But yeah, Unhurled Essence Grenade generator build was a thing back in Season 9 and 10. And yeah, we could bring something like that back. I know that some people enjoyed it. Personally, for me, this was a little bit too boring, but okay. The thing is, this is like another grenade build and so on, but yeah, this is what it is. Making other generators viable is going to be extremely hard though. So we have the Hellcat that supports the grenades, and then you have these typical generator items like Simplicity Strength and Death Diggers and stuff like this. And then you have the big buff from Unhurled Essence set that buffs the generators, and yeah, for grenades this will work, but yeah, something like this is way too little for example, the Bolas. I like the Leonine bow effect, but making an actual DPS build out of this will require much more. Same with Entangling Shot, also like Hanging Arrow, that they need a lot of support. They need like another item at least to give it like some special effect. Here we have the special effect suggested to have more damage per each enemy snared. Yeah, I think that goes well with the theme of the skill itself, but these kind of effects are always terrible because they require you to fish for extremely good rifts for only certain monster types and so on. So generally, I would suggest to change that, to have like equal damage in all situations, or even typically I would suggest to make builds that are stronger towards single target or towards like few targets and not the other way around. Because this is exactly the same issue that we have with something like Spirit Barrage right now, that just requires insane density to perform really well, and it's really weak when you have no density. And this is exactly what we want to avoid generally. Rajani Assaulter could be made multiplicative. I guess that would be a nice change to increase the power level a bit. But then again, like with Rapid Fire, we need to make sure that it doesn't perform as the best. So I think Rapid Fire meta needs to go. And yeah, just to be a little careful when buffing that, I guess. Some other interesting suggestions for support items though. I like this Black Feather idea with increased rocket damage. I would probably increase the number even more. And it also has like some defensive ability here. So I think this is pretty nice. This could be a good solution to buff multi-shot, for example. So you go like fire multi-shot, you have big rocket damage. I think that would feel amazing to have even stronger rockets than now. Because yeah, you can just like blast elites super fast. You can kill the Rift Guardian in like a minute on a pushing tier, which is like just like almost Frenzy Barb tier essentially for Rift Guardian times. And yeah, this would be pretty awesome, I think. Then we have a buff to Wolf Companions from the Cloak of the Garwolf. For some reason he included Boar. I would leave out the Boar, but double the effectiveness. It's a nice buff, especially to support the Aegis. So anything that goes in that direction is useful. Same with here, with Calamity. Calamity is a very sad story. After the nerf, it has been completely useless. And I really hope that something will happen to this item. So this is a good suggestion here. Burisa with Discipline. The problem with Burisa really is it's not really lacking anything, but the affix is just broken essentially. So it has like an internal cooldown of, I don't know exactly, but I think it's like a second or something. And this is really what makes Burisa quite bad. And this needs to be changed. And then, you know, potentially this could be made into like a Hungering Arrow item or something with, you know, some kind of like, you know, Arnold Essence, Hungering Arrow, the Quiver, and then you have Burisa, and or yeah, something like that. I think you can make like another generator version. That would be pretty cool. So we also have some suggestions for passive abilities. I think overall they are good, but Blizzard doesn't really change passives, I think. The problem here is that also something like Ambush is supposed to be buffed. Ambush is already one of the most used passives on Demon Hunter. I wouldn't really buff it, even though it's also not really super great. But we need more variety and not less. And we should rather look at defensive bonuses. So for example, yeah, stuff like Perfectionist, Brooding, Night Stalker is not really defensive, but also very niche, and Sharpshooter as well. And I think those are good suggestions. For example, for Sharpshooter, far away enemies take more damage. I think this is nice. Maybe we could add something like this reset only applies when you crit with a Resource Spender, because right now the issue is that almost every build has Vengeance, and Vengeance has like rockets and these side cannons and so on that deal 0 damage, but they crit and they remove the Sharpshooter bonus. So yeah, if you could, you know, time your nuke a little bit by just using a generator, and then, you know, doing like the 1 second big nuke with a little bit of more crit chance, I think that would be pretty cool. That would be really fun for something like a cluster bombs build or a multi-shot build. So you could, you know, stack it up for a little bit and then have, you know, like a short burst, and that would be pretty awesome. Night Stalker, I think this is a good suggestion. Brooding definitely needs a big bonus. With some utility, I think this is pretty good. I'm not really sure which build would really use that. I think even 8% life regen is probably not going to cut it, but it's something. And the cooldown reduction is probably kind of whatever, because when you have cooldown requirements in your build, you want to achieve that without the passive, because you need reliable cooldown reduction. But there could be a little bit of other effects involved, you know, maybe some damage reduction, some damage bonus or something like that. Then we have Perfectionist. This is essentially like a wizard passive, like Galvanizing Bard. I think Perfectionist is probably alright. You could just see like some number tweaks. I don't really want to make Demon Hunter into a wizard class and require everyone to use shields and squirts and so on. So I think that the builds are fine as they are. But it could be a nice solution for something like multi-shot with squirts or so that wants to get some shields. But yeah. Archery is definitely a sad story. This is completely useless for basically every build, so buffing that a bit would help. The problem here is that it's not really different from other passives in most cases. So you have bow is extremely weak right now. It's 8% additive. It becomes multiplicative with this suggestion. I think that's nice. Some crit damage for crossbows. It's like not just like plain damage scaling, but essentially that's the same with crit damage. Like, it doesn't really matter if the damage goes higher from crit damage or not. I think that we could maybe see some more interesting effects here for all of these weapon types. So something like goes in the direction of this. I think this is a very good solution, and some extra crit as well. So this would be pretty strong for dual wielding. Yeah, but they're still fine, but a little bit too boring in my opinion. So I think if they ever change archery, they should address this. So here we have the final numbers of what DMKT estimated for all of the individual builds, and including his own buff suggestions of what they're gonna end up with. And you can see that some of these builds are extremely underperforming. So something like Chakram builds with N6 and 4 or UE or something. There's a reason why no one is playing Chakram, and they definitely need some big buffs to even be remotely viable. And the same goes for some of these generator variations. These builds effectively don't exist, and they really need some new items essentially. Something like what I suggested with Hungering Arrow, Barisa. I think Hungering Arrow build could be amazing. I think that could work pretty well with UE, and it could be really fun, if they add like some kind of nice twist to these kind of skills. And you could just make a new build with only like one additional item and some number tweaks. So there's definitely a lot of potential. Same with N6 Strafe. I think most of these numbers are pretty accurate from just my own gut feeling. As I said, I didn't really play most of these builds anytime lately, but I've played most of them, or tried a lot of things at least, and some of the stuff really needs big damage buffs. And whenever they make these kind of changes, then we would be able to seriously attempt some higher tiers and see exactly what the fine tuning needs to be. So just ballpark numbers, that seems good. And we also don't really need the set to just be like the only meta for now. So in season 21, that's most likely what's going to happen, simply because the new sets are generally quite strong that the Blizzard implements, and Demon Hunter is generally extreme weak. So it's almost guaranteed that the new set will be the meta for both solo and probably group. And then afterwards you can hope for some balance changes here. And then we'll see. It would be really great to have kind of like some options to have like a speed meta where you can include a Demon Hunter, or like some high tier meta where you have like a Demon Hunter trash clear or something. That would be amazing. We need some buffs for solo players. We need to just Demon Hunter to perform better. But then also there will be like a time when everyone gets sick of the new set. It doesn't matter how amazing it is, and this is where we need the balancing to happen. This is where you want the variety. You want everything to be around equal. So it doesn't really matter which build you choose. It would be cool if you can just like start the season and decide, okay, this time I'm gonna play Marauders. Next season I'm gonna play Unholy Essence, and then have like a variation of a Hungering Arrow. We have a variation of grenades. We have some multi-shot. We have some ball lightning. And it all performs within like a range of tier 135 to 140 or something on the high end, something like that. And then you're also like somewhere in the mid-range of the other classes. I think that would be amazing. And also it's quite important for the overall health of the game and the community, I'd say. Right now, when you join a Greater Rift game in Publix as a Demon Hunter, people tell you to leave because you're a Demon Hunter. It's not very good. This is not what should be happening. And we just need some kind of like speed builds that you can play with other people, without much coordination required. Without feeling bad for being a class that is like 15 tiers weaker than another. That is simply not good. And we need a lot of changes essentially. But mostly it's numbers changes, and numbers changes are very easy. You can just calculate the expected gains and then fine tune it after like 1 or 2 rounds. And it should be not really such a big deal to balance it out a bit after like a bit of PTR testing and so on. So there will definitely be a lot of people trying out some kind of balance changes, whatever it's going to be. It might be that they actually change all of these numbers from all of these sets, and they do the same for other classes, like a really big update. And I think this is really what Diablo needs before it's kind of like going into a slumber phase until D4. And we just need this variety so that people can choose what they want and explore different classes, different builds without feeling bad. Because if you look at this table here, these are the top clears of all of the classes right now. That's someone put together here, and we can see that Witch Doctor, Crusader are really overperforming. Then you have Barb, Monk, which are also slightly overperforming, but I think overall they're okay. Barb is a little bit inflated because these are non-seasonal clears, and on non-season they have like a little bit stronger setup than what you can realistically play on season, minus the season 20 buff. But after the season 20 buff is gone, I assume that we're gonna get something that affects classes equally again. And I think going for like some kind of like range, where Barb, Monk, and Wizard are, is probably fine. So you can see that Demon Hunter is behind by like 10 tiers at least. Mostly because they actually cap out at 150 here, and the gap is really large, and we need big improvements to all builds, not just the top build. We don't just need like the new set, because after 2, 3, or 4 seasons or something of the same meta, people will want to play something else, and it doesn't matter how great the new set is. So we need something. Yeah, and the same happens to other classes as well. Necromancer is even worse. And we'll see what the new Necromancer set is going to be about. But also here, there's like a lot of builds and a lot of classes, and lots of opportunities to create new metas or create new builds with just like a few tweaks, maybe another item here and there, and that's about it. So the potential is really great for rather little work, I'd say. And I really hope that we're gonna get some really cool new updates then. So anyway, this was about it for my input for this post. Link is in the description. You can also read through it yourself, maybe contribute. If you have your own ideas for maybe new items for some builds that are not even included here, maybe for other classes even, I'm really curious to hear it. And maybe we can make Blizzard aware of this and listen to this. And I think overall those were really good points here. So I hope something will happen eventually. Probably not for next season, but for the season after, when all the new stuff is already implemented and we just need to tweak numbers mainly. And then I guess it's going to be great afterwards. Hope you liked my thoughts here. I'll see you guys next time.